Until suddenly, one bright Sunday morning, as I stood just outside the church watching William shake hands with his congregation, I found myself rudely awakened by the sight of one of the most exquisitely groomed women I'd ever seen in my life.
Mr. Thompson, I'm Mrs. Billywith of Atlanta. I must tell you how much I enjoyed your sermon.
Thank you, and I'm delighted you came to our church.
Thank you. I don't suppose you remember me, do you?
Well,
Why should you? You only saw me once 2 years ago at the railway station in Demarest. My automobile frightened your horse.
Oh, of course. You have a summer home here.
On the lake, and I've just recently returned from Europe.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you with us, and I hope you'll come back again soon.
I will.
I'd like to have you meet my wife. Mrs. Thompson, Mrs. Billywith.
How do you do, Mrs. Thompson? How do you do?
Fine, rousing sermon, William.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Thompson, I've been studying the Bible all spring. I wonder if I might drive by sometime soon and discuss several questions which have been bothering me.
Why, of course, any time at all.
Tomorrow, perhaps, about 3?
Tomorrow would be splendid.
Oh, that's very kind of you. Goodbye. It was a pleasure meeting you, Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you.
Charming woman.
Everything's so much clearer for me.
I consider it a privilege to be able to help.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Oh, do say goodbye to Mrs. Thompson for me, will you?
Very happy to.
All right, Otis.
For the Hebrew children, it was good for the Hebrew children, and it's good enough for me. Mrs. Billywith asked me to say goodbye, dear. She was sorry she didn't have time to come back.
That was sweet of her.
A remarkable woman.
Is she?
Oh, yes. Well-educated. Student of the Bible.
That's nice.
We were discussing parts of the scriptures, 2 Samuel in particular, about which she seemed confused. I think I was able to clear up several things for her.
William, is Mrs. Billywith happy at home?
No, she's not. Her husband is one of those straightforward, unimaginative businessmen. I gather he's very unsympathetic.
That must be very distressing to a woman of her sensitive nature.
Yes, it is.
Well, I hope she's enjoying her visits with you. Certainly her conversations always seem to do you a lot of good.
She tells me they've been a great satisfaction to her.
She coming back again?
Tomorrow at the same time. It's that old time religion. It's that old time religion. It's that old time religion. And it's good enough for me.
Oh, good afternoon, Mrs. Thompson.
Good afternoon.
Is Mr. Thompson in?
Well, he was, but he had to go on an errand. He'll be back soon. Won't you come in?
Thank you.
It's a nice day.
Rather warm.
Sit right here.
Thank you.
My husband tells me that you and he have been spending a very profitable time discussing the scriptures.
Yes, there were several very confusing points that your husband has been kind enough to clear up for me.
You're now discussing the second book of Samuel, I believe.
One of my favorite books of the Bible.
Possibly I could help you with the kind of interpretations you need better than William can.
Oh, really?
Yes. I've been thinking that what you need is to stay at home more and try to interpret your own Samuel. Your husband's given name is Sam, isn't it?
Yes.
He seems to me a very neglected prophet, too.
What do you mean?
That your husband, Mrs. Billywith, needs his spiritual faculties exercised and strengthened a good deal more than mine does.
Are you insinuating...
I am. You're not a bad woman. You're just a very silly one.
Why,
Oh, don't go. I've hardly begun. The world is full of women always wanting to consult a minister about some spiritual problem that doesn't exist. Whenever I hear of a minister who's disgraced himself with some female member of his congregation, my sympathies are all with him. I know exactly what's happened. Some silly woman who's unable to distinguish between her sentimental emotions and what passes for her soul goes to call on him. And the first thing she always tells him is, she's unhappy at home. Now, 99 times out of 100, nothing's further from the minister's mind than evil. But after he's listened to her for a while and seen a tear or two in her eye, he's trapped.
Mrs. Thompson.
Otis! I've lived with William long enough to know that he hasn't the faintest idea of what goes on in the purely female mind. And as far as I'm concerned, the less he ever knows about it, the better.
Otis, come on!
Personally, I regard you as a member of the worst class of mischief makers in society. Women who make a practice of slipping up on the blind side of some good man without even giving a thought to the consequences. Of course, you'll say I'm jealous of William. Well, I am. And I haven't the slightest intention of standing idly by and finding myself with a damaged husband, let alone preacher on my hands.
Never mind. Home, Otis.
Goodbye, Mrs. Billywith. I'm glad you're leaving, or I might lose my temper.
Go on!
Mrs. Billywith's car?
Yes, dear.
Well, couldn't she wait? Didn't you tell her I'd be back soon?
Yes, dear, I told her. But she was in a great hurry when she left.
Did she say she'd be back?
No, she didn't mention it. I gathered her husband needs her at home.
There's nothing wrong with them, is there?
I hope not.
Strange.
Don't unhitch, dear. I'm on my way to the Missionary Society meeting at Mrs. Brock's, and I thought I'd stop by the store and do some shopping.
Shall I drive you?
No, you stay here and work on your sermon.
Have a good time.
Thank you, dear. You have a good time, too.